Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to have a new fantastic guest in our show today. This company, this founder from this company, they have raised a total of $628.4 million dollars with the latest valuation of 3.1 billion. They have made three acquisitions to date, and they're one of the largest e-commerce operators in the continent. So, Bautista, who do we have in the show?
So we're going to have Alejandro Vázquez, the founder and president of what it is today, Nuvemshop or Tiendanube. They started almost 15 years ago, and they've been riding the wave for e-commerce, paving the way, and they're looking to do a lot more in the future. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Find the Way podcast. In this show, we will try to explore what is happening in emerging markets and how entrepreneurs, investors, and communities are simply finding the way to make phenomenal things happen, regardless how volatile the environment may sometimes seem.
Ale, are you based now in Brazil, right?
Exactly. In Sao Paulo for the last 10 years. Actually, 4 months ago, my first daughter was born and she's Brazilian. So my wife is Argentinian as well. So we are very based in Brazil right now.
And do you plan to stay or, well, at least, indefinitely?
No, yeah, we plan to stay. When we move to Sao Paulo, we say, okay, we go for at least 2 years because you need like a commitment like that because it's not easy at the very beginning, especially in the conditions we went. We didn't know anyone in Brazil almost. The company was already in the beginning, so it was pretty a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But after those two first years, we were like the city, the business was growing. So we say, okay, one more year at least. After the third year, we say, okay, and this is our place for now. And we plan to stay, for a while yet.
Mm-hmm. Did you move when you received the round from Kasek? So back in 2020? No, it was before that. You said 10 years.
Exactly. It was before that because we have the first round by the end of 2014, and we moved on January from that year. So we didn't have that round yet. So we have like the angel investment in 2011. After that, we got like a pre-series A investment from a venture capital from Brazil, very, very small. And with that money, we expand our team in Brazil, and that's when I decided to move to Brazil.
And now it's going little by little quite strong, at least based on the numbers and the outside press. But is that the reality? Things are going well.
Yeah, yeah, it changed a lot. A lot of things changed, but one of them is that by that time, Brazil was our second market. Now it's the main market for us. Argentina is still pretty strong. Mexico growing fast, but Brazil today is our main market in terms of every KPI, basically. Also, our team is stronger, it's bigger, and also we started like focus on bringing the possibility for every entrepreneur, from small entrepreneurs to big brands, to have their own online store with autonomy, easy to use. That's how we started. But today we have everything a merchant needs to be successful in the digital economy. So today we have payments, we have logistics, we have lending, we have consumer apps, and we are mainly developing those products for the Brazilian market, and then we expand to the other countries. So it changed a lot, but it took a lot of work. I mean, we used to be an Argentinian startup. Everything we did by that time, once it worked in Argentina, we expanded to Brazil, and it didn't work. And then we shifted our mindset, and we said, okay, we have to be Brazil first. As we talk of mobile first, we say, okay, Brazil first. And that changed a lot of things.
And what was it like not working, the things that you were able to successfully test and experiment in Argentina, and then you tried to replicate that in Brazil? What happened there? Where was it not really a smooth transition into that market?
Yeah. For instance, let me give you two examples from the top of the funnel. Thinking of marketing, we did some marketing campaigns with different landing pages, messages, and they really work in Argentina. But when we tried them in Brazil, the cut was very high. The quality of those uh, leads wasn't as good. Um, so that's an example, and we realized we were thinking like with an Argentinian mind, you know. And the second one is that when we launched in Brazil in 2012, formally just uh, a bit of context, we started the business in 28. We were at university. We started with it was the boom of the marketplaces, mainly Mercado Libre in Argentina.
So 2008 to 2008.
2008, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
Okay.
2008. Boom of marketplaces, the boom of social media, mainly Facebook and Twitter. And what we try to figure out is how people could buy and sell with more confidence, because people didn't trust internet by that time. E-commerce was less than 1% of total retail sales in Latin America and Argentina. So we started like a marketplace connecting with the social graph, so you could buy and sell with more confidence, right? That
Yeah.
product didn't work, but we learned a lot of things. And one of them was that there were some people that were trying to use some of the features we have in this marketplace. And they were basically entrepreneurs who were trying to show their products. And it was an e-commerce, what they wanted. But it was really expensive, was really frustrating for them, because they had to hire someone to do that job, a third party. And every time they wanted to change something, it was expensive. They didn't have the autonomy. So we thought, okay, we have these people trying to create an online store like the big retailers. What if we could build a platform where, based on a subscription model, now it's software as a service, but by that time, no one knew this concept almost. It was 2011, 3 years later. And that's when we pivoted to the model we have today, right? The software as a service concept, so everyone could have their own online store. So we started in Argentina, and pretty soon we launched in Brazil. And when we launched in Brazil, we realized the market was much more mature in terms of features. For instance, no one talk about in Argentina about transparent checkout, right? In Brazil, everyone wanted the ones who wanted an e-commerce. They say, okay, we need to have transparent checkout, right? For instance, or different type of users, so they could manage the different access of the users, security. It's and fraud are really important concerns for the Brazilian market.
Very quickly, just what do you mean by transparent checkout for the audience who might not know?
Transparent checkout is basically that when you buy at the online store, instead of being redirected to for instance, the payment method, it could be PayPal, Mercado Pago, Pagonube, or Nuvemshop, which is our own payment method. Instead of leaving the checkout and going to the payment method, you do everything on the same page. We could say it's the same checkout. So you have embedded the payment method, right? So we realized that Brazil was a huge market. There were a lot of competitors, but most of them were very hard to use. If you want to try and start your own online store, you have to fill like it was like a crazy form with a lot of information. It was like it seems like a form for the government, you know.
And to whom did you have to file who did you need to submit this form?
To different companies that were offering the e-commerce platform. But it wasn't this concept of software as a service,
Hmm.
pretty easy to use. It was like it was like an old concept of software yet.
Yeah, yeah,
So we realized that even though there were a lot of competitors, most of them we thought or they will change and adapt or they will die.
yeah.
And mm, and we have room to start helping merchants from Brazil, but again, we realized that our product wasn't good enough for the type of merchant we faced in Brazil. So um, after 2 years, we became a Brazilian first company.
And Ale, why did you choose Brazil? Because normally people don't encourage entrepreneurs to go to Brazil first if you're Spanish speaking. Was it because you already had clients there, or what was the reason aside from
And
the huge market?
and especially Argentinians who seem to be
Yeah,
afraid to go in the Brazilian
I
market.
don't know if it's afraid, but they don't seem to trust Argentinians well for a reason or two.
Well, we have many, not many, but we have very successful companies started in Argentina and Brazil being their first market, like Mercado Libre, Decolar by the time, Whole Cheese, as well, OLX actually. I don't, I forget. I think there are a couple of more there. But why we choose Brazil? Actually, when we launched the marketplace, the first product I mentioned before, we say, okay, we are all in Latin America. And we launched in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, Colombia at the same time. It was just translation and the flags. That's the concept of of launching different countries. Then we realized that that wasn't enough, right? Um, but when we started Tiendanube, as known today, we realized we really wanted to build a company that could help millions of people in Latin America. And why Latin America? Because we really believe that with technology, we can improve people's life. And that Latin America, even though each country is very different, at the same time, it's an underserved region and a huge region. So started in Argentina because we were born there. But then we thought, okay, if we really want to be very successful, we have to figure out Brazil. There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it's how we saw the business by that time. And we say, if we want to raise money, we have to prove that we can build a successful business in Brazil, and then we can expand to other countries. And that's how we thought about it. And we launched in Brazil on the early days, and it took many years before we decided to expand to other countries, mainly Mexico. Even though we have organic growth in Mexico, Chile, Colombia, it was on the last 3 years that we launched in those countries. And the
Uh-huh.
main reason was about focus, because we say, okay, are we growing in Brazil? Yes, we are. Are we growing enough compared to the market size? No. We think we could grow even faster. We were growing faster than competitors, of course, faster than the e-commerce per se, but we wanted to be even more successful in Brazil. So that's why we took like many years before we opened other markets, because at the end, it was that will compete with our time, with our focus, with our energy. And in the last 3 years, when we raised the higher rounds, that's when we decided, okay, now it's time to invest part of the capital we have and the resources, the team, the energy to start building the other countries. But we have to be clear that Brazil, it's our main priority, right?
How much have you raised, or how much did you raise before you started expanding into those other countries?
We raised $70 million basically, but it was very, those rounds were very, very close, one of each one. The last one was in 2021. We have two actually that year, and combined, it was like almost more than $500 million.
Why was it 2 rounds in 21, and why were so many rounds in a very close time horizon?
That's a good question. We started we were looking for the first round. We closed on the early 2021. That was basically to keep expanding our business, and not only our business in the regions we were already operating by that time, which were Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, but also to expand to other geographies more aggressively, and also develop other products or business units which are part of our vision, which are payments, financial services, more generally, and logistics. And so it made total sense to fundraise again by that time. And that year was like the crazy year of the financial markets. There was a lot of capital in the market, quite cheap, and actually it happened something that I don't know if it is going to happen again in the future. Probably not. But venture capitals were pitching us on why we should choose them. And we told them, we are not raising for more money. We have enough money in the bank to for our use of proceeds, keep growing the business. But then we started thinking, when we look at the long-term vision, everything we wanted to build, it makes sense to us to raise that money, which was basically on our hands. I mean, we didn't have to go for it. And it makes sense because of everything we want to build in the long term, and the business we know we can build in the long term in terms of valuation, and of course, making sure our investors are satisfied with our business in the long term, right? So that's why we ended up having that second round by mid 2021. In retrospective, I think it was a great decision, because then we saw what happened in the market, and now we keep being very cautious. We always been, to be honest, we always been very cautious on how we invested our money, because again, we know we want to grow faster, we want to lead the market, but at the same time, we know that it takes time to build a business that we are building. I mean, when we started, I said that before, less than 1% of total retail sales were e-commerce. Before the pandemic, it was 5%, this in Latin America. Now it's around 10 to 12%. It grew a lot, but it's still a very small figure compared to China, for instance, which is in 50%, right? So again, we want to be the drivers of the bus. We are the bus, as we said, but at the same time, we know that we have to be patient in terms of how the market, the retail in general, business, the e-commerce business is growing at the whole ecosystem, right? So yeah, in retrospective, I think it was a great decision, and now we are 100% focused on building that ecosystem.
So, Ale, has your strategy changed since then? You said it's probably never going to happen again, or unlikely that these rounds are going to be raised. Have you changed the strategy because of that? So, you raised a round, now you're going a bit more cautious towards the next few years.
What changed is that we are able to accelerate all that long-term vision we have. So we accelerated the financial services business. We accelerated the logistic business, and not only in Brazil, but also in Mexico and Argentina. And we accelerated the expansion to other geographies. And at the same time, there's an expression in Brazil, which is you have to have the back to basics, feijão com arroz, has to be very well done, the back to basics. And it's about delivering the best product to create an online store for the SMB segment and the mid-market segment. Today we have like two, it's the same product. I mean, it's the same platform, but we have like two different customer profiles, which are the SMBs, the small entrepreneurs. Some of them start a business from scratch. Others are from the offline world, which are starting their direct to consumer online business. Others are big brands which wants to work with us, or the smaller ones that grew. So that's why we talk about SMBs and mid-market. So we have to make sure that those merchants, those customers are very, very well satisfied with us in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico. And that is about the product. It's about building our core product. It's about improving our core product. It's about creating this whole ecosystem, which are hundreds of tech partners which integrate their services with us: payments, logistics, marketing tools, ERPs, among others. And of course, that takes a lot of work. Today, we are almost 1,000 people. Uh, Almost half of the team is product and technology.
And from there, if we take a look, you mentioned something that you have really accelerated growth in terms of providing more services in the logistics and financial sector, and you're making, let's say, a more holistic package from Tiendanube for your clients. Logistics, it's a tough issue because a lot of the SMB, small and medium-sized companies, they really lose their margins. What comes into logistics, the returns. How are you really helping? How are you trying to solve the problems for the small and medium-sized companies in terms of that they're not going to go out of business? If we just take a look at the example with Europe or the US, the so-called more developed markets, it's a nice dream and in certain cases an illusion that came to people's minds during COVID era that they want to get rid of their corporate jobs and go and start drop shipping, starting online shops. The tools are becoming super easy to use, like what you're trying to do. People going after their dreams and saying, fuck it, we're going to go and build something on our own. But then the harsh reality starts to kick in right now. We're seeing a huge bankruptcy wave this year in Europe or in the US as well, in for these small and medium-sized enterprises, because for instance, if they have any real products that they are operating outside of software, logistics becomes such a nightmare that they start losing money, and then the opportunity cost, especially in the more expensive countries, is becoming so high. Is that if you really want to make money, if you want to even survive in certain cases, rather you should take a job than have your own small medium-sized enterprise that you're operating. How is it in Latin America that you're seeing? Is that are there the similarities? Are your customers making money? That's ultimately the question that I have, is that are they making money because what you're doing for them? Or is that just the competition in the game where they are playing so brutal that it really doesn't matter what the Tiendanube is doing, is because the margin is going to be so thin that they should reconsider, do they need to have a small shop?
Yeah, that's a good uh, concern, an important concern. And let me show you. Well, first of all, most of our merchants are they leverage their own growth based on profitability. So they don't have much access to credit, to lending. So they have to be profitable almost
Yeah.
from day one. So that's the reality of most of our merchants today. Second, when you look at if we want to make or help merchants, small and medium businesses from Latin America successful, we have to bring them the economies of scale to be able to offer uh, almost free shipping or same day
Yeah.
delivery or next day delivery, because otherwise they can compete with marketplaces or the huge
Yeah.
retailers, right? So that's what we are bringing, and you have like two flavors of logistics. The first one is not related to the physical world. It's more about software and bringing those economies of scale, so we can represent the hundreds of thousands of merchants we have, and we can negotiate better rates with
Yeah.
the different shipping methods. So that's what we've started already in Brazil, Argentina, and now in Mexico. So that's a huge differentiator for them,
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
they have access. They have access to better rates. In some cases, they also have better delivery times, and that makes their business more competitive. And there's almost no. That's part of our value proposition. And it's not an additional cost for the merchant. So that's one side of the logistics business. The other side of the logistic business, it involves the physical world, and that's what we've started in Brazil. We bought a company 2 years ago called Mandae. Mandae is a cross-docking business, which with the cross-docking business, you basically decrease the cost of the shipping because you are more efficient working with different shipping methods, right? Um, so that's the first step in the physical world. We
Hmm.
could think in the long term we could think about having different delivery centers like Mercado Libre did or Amazon did. That's in the long term. But in that case, it's also about decreasing costs to ship, but also it could be improve delivery time, right?
Yeah.
So we are convinced we have to do that if we want to make our customers or merchants more successful.
Yeah.
Exactly how we are going to do that, we are improving on a monthly basis. But and for our side, it's a healthy business. Of course, the margins are thinner than the SaaS business for sure. But we have a healthy business. It's not that we are losing money there.
Yeah, no, but okay, to summarize in a way is that I like what you mentioned over there. That the if we need to really narrow it down into one sentence that you're offering um to the small and medium-sized enterprises that really caught my attention over there is it's at the end of the day economies of scale in terms of your capability to have the power to negotiate with all, let's say, the downstream suppliers and service providers that they can get cheaper costs what comes to actually moving their goods. And number two, um, they're going to get faster deliveries. Because, for instance, if I now start a shop, I want to sell t shirts, I want to sell shoes, I want to sell whatever, and I created an online shop, I would have humongous problems in negotiating with the major logistics providers because I can't get the rates um, that makes my business sustainable. I would go out of business based on just looking at the Excel sheet. I would never even start. So if you can bring this, let's say,
Exactly.
negotiating power to the table, and reduce the cost and speed up the delivery time, there is at least a chance to compete. Because otherwise, it's going to be a brutal game. The larger retailers are going to eat you out alive if you don't have that.
Yeah, and one thing
Exactly.
that you mentioned is Mercado Libre. For those that don't know, this is the biggest marketplace in Latin America. And one question here would be, how is Tiendanube differentiating from Mercado Libre for those that are not aware of what's happening in Latam? And how do you participate in the brand of the SMEs basically?
Great. So we are the brand behind the brands. So we offer everything the merchant needs to be successful on a direct to consumer business. And I'd say direct to consumer business and not online business because we are also working on the offline side of the retail business. So we want to provide everything the merchant needs to be successful. So that's the main difference with the marketplaces, right? In the marketplaces, the focus is on the consumer. You want to deliver the best for the consumer, the best price, the best delivery time, the best payment method. And that puts a lot of pressure on the merchant side, on the offering, right? So it's a different game.
Yeah.
Now, do we compete, Tiendanube or Nuvemshop compete with marketplaces? Not at all. Actually, they could be, it's a complement in some cases. The marketplace could be a complement. We have merchants starting selling on the marketplace and then go direct to consumer or otherwise. The ones who really compete with the marketplaces are our merchants, right? Our customers. So let me give you so that's the main difference. The marketplace usually charges like a percentage of the sale, which is generally between 10 to 20%. It's very, very high. That's because they generate demand for your business. They generate sales for your business, but at a high price. And also you as a merchant, you are not owner of the experience of that consumer. you are not owner of the relationship with that consumer. The marketplace does. On the direct to consumer or the online store, you manage the experience, you design the experience, you are the owner of the merchant. Even though you work on a platform like Tiendanube, again, we are the brand behind the brands, right? And that's why in our case, we have a monthly fee and also a transaction fee, but it's much, much smaller. It's less than 2%. And in some cases, it's for free because we have a freemium model as well, a freemium plan. And the ones who use Nuvemshop or PagoNube, which is our payment method, there's no transaction fee associated with the plan. So those are the difference. And let me give you an example. I always do this question, and almost everyone raised their hand. I always ask, when you're looking for a product on the internet and many times you end at the marketplace and you look at the product and say, hey, let me see who's the merchants, who designed this product. And you find the name of the brand. You look for that brand on maybe Google, and you find they have an online store, right? And you go to the online store, but what happens? You don't have free shipping, or the delivery time takes a lot of time, or you don't have free installments. So many times that's a deal breaker for us as consumers, and we end up buying on the marketplace. That's what we want to change. We want to make sure that our merchants can offer everything the marketplace offers in terms of payments and logistics in their own online store.
One thing I like here as well is that another stopper, at least for me, is the trust, because it's not the same the trust that I have on the marketplace and has their brand established than
Yeah.
just a random merchant on the internet. So how are you guys building on that trust, not only from the brand but also for the payments and these side?
Perfect. Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, what we are doing is we're doing many things. One of them was building Nuvemshop or Pago. Nuvemshop is for the Brazilian market. PagoNube is for the Spanish-speaking Latin America. We launched PagoNube, which is increasing the trust of the merchants, because even though we are the brand behind the brands, Tiendanube, it's getting more known by the consumers in the region. The same thing with logistics. We launched this year in Brazil and Argentina, but we are operating in all Latin America. We launched the consumer app, which is like a wallet, basically. So what happens when you buy? Let's say Eric has his own online store. He sells shoes, and I go and buy some shoes at ericsstore.com. At the end of the checkout, once I finish the purchase, I have the option to create my own wallet of Tiendanube. When I go to Bautista's online store to buy another thing, and it's my first time on your online store, at the checkout, I will have the option to log in with with the consumer app, and I already have all the information, my personal information, payments, shipping methods. So what happens? The conversion increases, so that's great for the merchant, and the transaction is more secure because I already have all that information.
Mm-hmm.
So that's helping increase the trust between all the network of the hundreds of thousands of online stores. So that's another example of how we are building trust, especially for the merchants that are new on the market, right? That probably no one knows them yet.
Mm-hmm. I have a question here. It may not be the same thing, but are you guys trying to build a one-click checkout kind of thing for merchants? With this, it just came to mind with this example.
To be honest, we look at that more like yeah. The short answer is yes. We are. I think it's like a way to make purchases easier and simpler for the consumer, and also increase the conversion for the merchant. So yes, and the consumer app helps you create that experience as Amazon does, for instance, or Mercado Libre as well.
And basically now, okay, this is the game that you're playing and how you're moving forward. But how, for instance, now you mentioned that with Mercado Libre, there are, let's say, complements, and they're not competing on about the same exact market or same niche where you're operating. How about a Shopify, the global monster that is dominating most of the similar activities, especially in Europe, in the US? Are they active in this part of the world? Are you seeing that as a huge competitor or a threat?
They are in Latin America, and they are a competitor as many local players we have, and also some other international players. The main difference, why Shopify exists and why Tiendanube exists, is that e-commerce it has a lot of there are a lot of local frictions in each of the
Hmm.
markets. And as I said, Latin America, we can see that as a whole region. But when you double click, each country is very, very different. Brazil is very different from Argentina, not only in terms of language, but also in terms of how people buy, the ecosystem you have in terms of payments, in terms of logistics. Um, um, you have Mercado Libre as a whole player. You have Facebook or Meta. You have Google, but then there are a lot of local players. So in terms of the product you build, you need to build a product for the Brazilian market, for the Argentinian market, the Mexican market, and that's not a priority for Shopify. That's very, very clear, and it is for us
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be focused on Latin America. That's and it's about the whole experience
yeah,
from the time you decide to start the e-commerce, the onboarding process, how we talk to the merchant, what we recommend the merchant to do in terms of products, payments, logistics, the design of the online store, everything. That's one big part of the game, the core product, focus on the local market. Second, it's about the ecosystem. Shopify has built a great, amazing ecosystem of, I don't know exactly the number right now, but 9,000 apps. But most of them are focused on the American, the European market, not focused on the Latin American market, because it's not just about having or not the app, but also the quality of that integration.
and what do you mean? What do you mean by the quality of the integration? Can you specify a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Let me give you an example. Let's say talk about email marketing tools, right? You have like different email marketing tools in the market. You have like the international ones, but then you have locals in Brazil and Argentina as well, Mexico. You could have like a very simple integration with just, for instance, took the email from the purchase from the consumer and sends that information to the um, email marketing app. Very basic. That's the integration.
Yeah,
Or you could have something much more sophisticated, where you not only have the email, but you also have all the historical purchases of that customer. You have the LTV of that customer. You can create different kind of triggers based on that information, and it's not the same integration. You have like you could see the integrations from 0 to 10, and that's in terms of the quality. But then of course you have the bugs or the issues. I mean, the product has bugs, the integrations also has bugs. Who will prioritize? Let's put on the shoes of a partner of Tiendanube, an
hmm,
email marketing tool. Okay, and let's say, okay, I look at the e-commerce platforms, and those are acquisition channels for me, right? And it should be low acquisition channels in terms of cost. So I integrate with Tiendanube, Shopify, and others. Then, if I'm an email marketing tool based focused in Brazil, and I have hundreds of thousands of customers in Brazil with Nuvemshop, and I have just some with Shopify, and I know Shopify is is bigger outside Brazil. But who should I criticize when I have a bag with one of the integrations? The one who really gives me more customers right now, right? So, I mean, it's like you compete with every hour of the dev team of our partners, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So what we always talk to our tech partners is that we have to have the best integration and make sure that they invest most part of their dev time with us. And that makes the flywheel spin faster, because if we have a great integration, no bugs, very well integrated, more merchants are likely to use them with us. If more merchants are likely to use that integration, we have a stronger product. If we have a stronger product, more people will want to work with us as well. So talk about that flywheel of network effects. And that's where what we are doing is making that spin faster in Latin America.
On this sense, if when we look at now, you are as Tiendanube focusing on let's say the major mega markets of the region like Brazil and Mexico. But then if we take a look of a little bit smaller countries like Paraguay, Bolivia, Ecuador, Central American countries, if there is going to be and when there is inevitably going to be great e-commerce companies like you, but a lot smaller scale, if they create this smooth experience, great integrations, that means that you're on an eye for them to buy them out and to put them together. So is this what you have in mind for, let's say, the smaller markets? If you want to basically get a humongous portion of the whole continent and the whole Latin American market, you cannot go into every place on your own. And if somebody's building locally, let's say in Bolivia with a population of a little bit over 12 million people, this is going to grow there as well. Um, are you going to keep an eye for acquisitions?
I think we should always be open to acquisitions. We did a couple of them, not in e-commerce platforms, but I mentioned logistics. We
Yeah.
did that. The same thing with e-commerce na práctica, which is the largest e-commerce school in the world. It's focused on Brazil, but it's the largest in the world in terms of subscribers. We bought that company 2 years ago, and also a software factory from Argentina, but that wasn't about product. It was more about the team only.
We were just talking about M&A basically on smaller markets, but as a side question to this, if I am an entrepreneur in Bolivia, I have an SME, and then I want to start using Tiendanube, even though it's not your focus country or destination, is it still a working product that I can use uh, semi-fluently?
Yes, people from every country can use Tiendanube. Of course, it won't be the same product with all the power we have in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, because we don't have developed the local ecosystem, which is one of our differentiators. And also, we haven't adapted many local frictions. For instance, the checkout. And answering to Eric's question regarding Shopify, there are a lot of nuances of the checkout which are very local from Brazil, from Argentina, Mexico, like things around shipping method, the address, how you um, must have information on the checkout, like CPF in Brazil. So we haven't adapted the checkout for other countries from Latin America, but yes, we do have some customers using our product, but again, with some limitations. And and we are very clear with our merchants when they share feedback. For instance, a merchant from Bolivia or Paraguay or Uruguay, when they send us and share some feedback, we are very clear. Okay, great, thanks. But to be honest, it's not something we are prioritizing right now. That's I'm connecting with the previous question. We haven't seen very strong local players in the other countries from Latin America. we are open to potentially an acquisition, but we have to be it. It has no sense for us to buy just a customer base. There has to be a product which really accelerate the product vision we have for that country. As I said, why we acquire the logistics company in Brazil, because that helps us accelerate the product, the knowledge on the logistics side of our vision. So it makes a lot of sense from that side. And also the team.
You would be looking into potential acquisition, let's say, especially in these little bit smaller markets, but not only to acquire the customer base, you would be needing something that is more robust in terms of product, or something that really advances your cause and not only the customer list, so to speak.
Exactly. So we are open to acquisitions. Uh, in case we are open to acquisitions in case those acquisitions helps us accelerate the long-term vision we have for product. So it shouldn't be just growing customer base. It has to be around product and knowledge about a specific part of our business. It could be like about logistics or payments, or about geography in the case of the question you did, and also of course about the team, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't found yet any local platform strong enough that will help us in that sense, but we are open to it.
Yes. And then regarding the past acquisition that you made, everybody's talking a lot about the lack of exits in the market that is making some investors, especially investors coming outside of Latin America, more cautious of putting and allocating more capital into the region. You made a couple acquisitions, and what are the ballpark of those exits? Are you able to, or are you allowed to say what those are, in terms of the amount of money that has been moved around?
It's undisclosed information we have. Unfortunately, I can share it. But what I can say is that for the founders, and not all of them have investors behind the business, but it was a really good deal. Not only in terms of uh, financial aspect, but also in terms of what they wanted to build or keep building. Right? It was like a good synergy. There are a lot of businesses in our opinion that um, they could work standalone, but they are much stronger if they are built around a platform like ours.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of synergy with those acquisitions, and I think that there are more opportunities to come. But again, it's I mean, when you are open to acquisitions, it's not that you say, okay, let's go to the market and see what we find. It's like there are a lot of things to consider. Some of them are not in your control, and
Yeah, yeah.
also it's an acquisition. It's really really hard, because once you figure out the terms and conditions, then it's about how you make sure that the product, the people, the culture really fits in, and it really works. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. So we learn a lot from the three previous acquisitions we did in the last 2 years and a half. Um, so we are much more prepared for future opportunities of that kind. But it's not something that you can do like 10 at the same time, or the risk is that many of them potentially fail, right? At least, again, it's, as I say, we're very cautious on how we build the business. We've been
Yeah,
very
yeah.
cautious in terms of financial investments along this almost 15 years. So at least it's how we envision that we want to build a product and a company in general.
Absolutely. But then if we look at, let's say we stay in the topic of mergers and acquisitions, because what you mentioned when you got started in the game, it was less than 1% of e-commerce sales were accounted for from the total retail sales in Latin America. currently, if we now just open up Statista, the data provider, the global data provider, states that e-commerce as a share of total retail is roughly 11% right now, and it's being predicted that it's going to be going towards 20% by 26. Um, do you see that when this growth is being expected, Tiendanube and your other competitors and players alike are going to be able to grow organically and still take momentum from this market? Or are you going to start seeing more consolidation overall? Um, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting. The market, the e-commerce market, it's, it's growing. It's growing fast. Of course, not as fast as in the pandemic, but it's
Yeah,
that's
but still pretty damn fast.
yes, exactly. So when you have a market that it's growing like that, we still see uh, new players starting, and in particular in the case of Brazil, which is still very fragmented, and you can see e-commerce platform that I never heard of, and you could say, okay, you don't pay attention to the competition enough, and it's not that. It's the market is very big, and you see like local players very strong in a specific city from Brazil, and that's great, and that's very interesting because you see that the market is growing, that they are able to reach to specific regions of Brazil, but at the same time we see a consolidation. And when we started, we have like a list, an Excel with more than 50 competitors, as I mentioned, and most of them died. So we've seen a consolidation, and it makes a lot of sense. For Brazil, I don't see the need to have like 150 or 30 platforms, because you lose a lot of the things we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's hard to build economies of scale, to build really good product. I mean, we've invested a lot of money and time among almost 15 years in technology, so most of the companies can't do that. And if you don't build technology, you probably die. So we've seen consolidation, but again, at the same time, we see new players creating e-commerce platform, which is great. I think we learn from each of them.
Yeah. And then how about you're getting into a size that what was the latest valuation that you had in your round? Now it's in 21, right?
Exactly. Mid 2021, it was $3.1 billion.
Have you been okay, now the market is getting a little bit more dry and capital is not as easily and cheaply available, but are some of the more global players being pushing to you and seeing what are the desires of your growth and had those conversations been initiated in terms of somebody would acquire you? Or are you getting too expensive and are you, let's say, looking into um when the market is going back up again that you would be looking for a listing?
We're in the long run, we look for listen. It's a means to keep growing our business. We are very well capitalized, so we don't need money. That's the truth. And again, even though we are deploying more capital in our business, growing geographically, growing on the main markets, building new products, we've done some acquisitions. Even though we are doing all that, we still have a lot of money in the bank for the long run, and be able to manage our future in terms of profitability. So we have a clear path.
You have not been acting like the Adam Neumann of Latin America and going all in. You got a little money and then you got all in on private jets and spend it all. You're actually being pretty frugal with your cash and being saving it.
Yes, yes. That when I said that we've been always very cautious with our capital is in that sense, and we see a lot of companies failing because of not doing that. And that's again, it's how we are with our life, and we grew up, and fortunately, all the founders and partners, we're very similar in that sense. So it's not a discussion, a hot discussion we have. It's like we're pretty aligned in that sense, and I think we were lucky to be like that, because it could change a lot the trajectory of the company on how we want to build the company. So um, again, we have everything on our hand. To be honest, we have everything on our hand to keep leading the market, to grow faster. Um, so as I said before, we are lucky enough to be 100% focused on building product and helping more merchants, because it's everything on our hand.
Absolutely, absolutely. But then you are pushing a lot of cash into product development. You mentioned about your team. Most of it are focusing on product or operations, and when ultimately there's going to be a new capital need if you want to really still expand further and take a bigger portion of the pie in Latin America in a potential listing, would that be taking place? Where is the US the only option, or is Brazil, the Brazilian listing, also at the table?
To be honest, it's not something we invested a lot of time thinking,
Yeah.
because again, it's a means to an end for us. It's not in the short term, because we don't need that. But when we think about it, it's mainly the US. It's what makes more sense for us. But again, we have to. That's something. That's something we should think more carefully in a couple of years.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then we can see you. You say that now you should think in a couple years, but then the market conditions change. In 2 years, we're going to see you ringing the bell in New York. That's that is also a plausible scenario.
Yeah, yeah, it could. And again, we are the way we manage the company will allow us to make a great business, and at the same time, of course, being profitable with the cash in bank we have with the previous fundraisings we did. So that's a very privileged scenario, considering
Yeah.
the yeah the context in general.
And overall, let's say if we now come from here, is that you have this privileged scenario. You have, let's say, strong balance sheet in the region. Obviously, you've been able to gain momentum and traction in a way that you're becoming into a position of also this freedom of choice. Okay, you have these opportunities. You want to go for a listing. You would be able to raise capital in the markets, no matter what is the current status of the capital game in the world. But then from here to your clients, the ones that you're serving, the SMBs, you mentioned that you're providing and you have been focusing more of offering better logistics services and financial services. Is this something that you have in your pipeline, in your roadmap, that you would be offering also credit facilities, credit lines into the SMBs? Because when we look at the realities of Latin America on an individual level and also on a business level, access to credit is almost it's nothing, right? And if you have access to it, it's redunculously expensive. And that is a huge difference compared to what I grew up in Europe or what I've seen in the US. We have very fast access to different credit instruments and loan instruments. So is this something that you have in your pipeline?
Yes, we do, and one of the reasons is what you already mentioned. It's very hard in Latin America. There are differences between countries. I mean, Brazil, it's easier than Argentina, for instance. But that's one of the reasons we want to do that, because we want to make things easier for entrepreneurs. It's already hard to start a business, especially in Latin America. So that's our driver, the first driver. The second one is that we have a competitive advantage, which is we understand, we have all the data of the business of our merchant. If the
Yeah.
merchant, not only because we have our payment method, but if the merchant chooses, for instance, using 3 different payment methods, we can see all the cash flow from that merchant. We know how much uh, uh, products they have. We know where they're selling. We have a lot of information which allow us to provide a better lending conditions. And we've seen already, we have a pilot, we've seen how offering lending to these merchants allow them to accelerate their business, because and that's amazing. That's really, really amazing. So it's also connected with the purpose of our company. So yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, it's something and it's having our payment method, Pago Nube, it's like the building block to start offering lending, right?
Have you already done some tests on these regards on credit, like to special customers already?
We did, yes, we did, and the results were great. So we are happy to see that uh, happening, and being able to see how we can help merchants from a different perspective as we've done so far.
That's brilliant.
How did you guys approach this? So, you want to test credit. How did you think about this? So we have these clients we really like very much, or what is the criteria, and, how did you go about testing credit out in the actual market?
Well, first you have to go with the customers. You have a strong relationship that they've been with us for a long time, that we know how well they sell. Then to understand their needs, if you find someone who has a credit limit which could allow them to potentially sell more, you know that the use of proceeds of that capital, then it's easier to know. Okay, we know it's a safe investment here, uh, and then that's how you start the pilot. That how we envision credit or lending. It's imagine every merchant today, every merchant in Brazil, when they create the online store, they can already offer credit card payment because they have uh, uh, the opt out of Nuvemshop. So imagine once you start selling based on your information of payments, among other things, you have a button which says, uh, "We believe that based on the product you sell, on how you've been selling on the last few weeks, if you could double your stock based on the season of your product, we believe you could double your sales as well. You need help. Take this credit for X amount, so, and with just one click, you can access that credit." That's how we envision credit. Of course, you can do that for everyone right now, but that's that's how we envision the product of building a business from scratch.
No, absolutely, and that's
And
brilliant. That's how you're able to unleash the potential of the SMBs in a way, and also expand your market. If you want to really expand the pod and the pie by offering credit, it keeps your clients growing, which enables you to get bigger revenue. It's beautiful that if you basically these services that you're creating allows them to expand and make e-commerce even more bigger.
one thing here, Ale, is, are you currently offering this forecasting, these tips, as you mentioned? Like, okay, if you double the stock today, you could grow a bit more. Is this something you're doing today, or are you looking into doing without credit?
With credit in particular, we haven't done that yet. It's more, we are in the learning curve, I would say. Um, because again, you have to be careful with which kind of promises you do to those merchants. But yes, we are delivering. Uh, we started to deliver more useful information to our merchants based on all the knowledge we have from all the merchants we have, right? In terms of, it's basically offering benchmarks which help the merchant make smarter decisions in terms of pricing, in terms of what kind of promotions they should do on their online store, the volume of stock of units of each product. So, to be honest, there's a lot we can still offer in that sense, but that's something we've been improving a lot in the last few months.
That's super interesting.
So yeah, imagine. I mean, we're, on scale, we could talk, for instance, emerge from Belo Horizonte in Brazil, from Belo Horizonte, who sell shoes in a specific region. We could provide benchmarks based on that on that segment, on that specific region. We could be very, very specific, so the information is even more useful for the merchants, and they can take make better decisions. So that's what we are building.
And what is then next for you in line as a little final theme, Alejandro, is like you said at the very beginning you're now heading towards Germany to do a next marathon of yours. You're a runner. You've been running for over a decade, but the last couple of years very seriously. What else is happening to you? You've been with the journey of Tiendanube for quite a bit. Many years have gone by. You've seen a lot, ups and downs, everything crashing, everything going up. So what is happening to you as a individual? Are you still seeing yourself with Tiendanube for the long run, or are you seeing something new on the horizon?
To be honest, forward looking, we're still at the very beginning, and what excites me about that is that we still have a lot to build. And again, even though we are the largest e-commerce platform in Latin America, we are still pretty small compared to the millions of merchants we can still help, and that excites me a lot. And I really, really believe in our purpose, and that makes me stay here for a while yet. That's part of the story. Again, then of course a lot of things change in the middle. Running is something I love. I really enjoy. 5 months ago, my first daughter was born. Olympia, she's Brazilian. Uh, so that's a new thing I'm learning to be a dad, and together with my wife Sabrina. So that's another chapter of my life that I'm really enjoying. So that's, I don't have much more time for other things, but something I love, just to mention, there are two things that are really, um, I'm really interested and trying to canalize that through Tiendanube. It's about education. That's something I'm concerned, interested about. So part of my job today is like trying to educate or help merchants with what we have. So that's how I'm working with education today. I could work in other ways in the future. And also something that concerns a lot, it's about climate change. I'm not really focused on that right now, but something I'm thinking on how I could work towards that, even with Tiendanube.
Super cool. Super cool. So then you're gonna have a lot of work to be done with all of the things that you still want to achieve. And as you mentioned, is still the e-commerce in Latin America is very young, very nascent. We're far from the numbers. What you mentioned earlier in this pod is about China. Current e-commerce accounts for 50% of all retail volume. So there's still a lot of work to be done in order to get to those numbers. So I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have a wild ride still from now on, even further to the future.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Bautista. Yeah, great.
Great to have you in the show, Alejandro and Bautista. Do you have anything to add for the end?
No, I just want to thank Ale for coming here. It's been super exciting to hear you talk, and it's been a long ride. I didn't remember it was 15 years you've been in Tiendanube. That's it. We all remember when you got big, so around like huge, basically 2021. But it was a lot of years of hard work before that.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk with you guys.